You are listening to Co-Create Your Life. In this podcast, we delve deep into the law of attraction, dispel common misconceptions, and give our listeners the tools they need to build a magical, purposeful existence in their everyday lives. Reclaim the creative power you already possess and join us at co-creationcoaching.org/create. That's co-creationcoaching.org/create.
Welcome to Co-Create Your Life. This is episode 13, How to Stop Identifying with Your Past Stories. I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
And I'm Justin Williams.
And today we are discussing basically what to do when you are hanging on to your past stories. You're letting them label you and say things about you and mean things about you. What do you do when that happens and you have trouble letting that go so you can move into the future to achieve the goals that you want? What do you do when that happens? So first of all, the show notes for this episode you can find at co-creationcoaching.org/create013. Again, that's co-creationcoaching.org/create013. If you would like to ask a question for this podcast that we'd be happy to answer, you can go to co-creationcoaching.org/ask, and we will be happy to answer anything you ask that we can generalize to a podcast. You know, very, very specific things probably wouldn't work very well, but we love answering your questions, so please go there and ask. So, again, today we're discussing past stories. Unfortunately, we had someone all queued up to... we were going to have someone come on and volunteer to work through a goal with us. We were going to help her and work through her resistance to her goal. And it just didn't work out due to technical issues, unfortunately. So instead, we had her ask her question. And I asked her basically, what is it that's holding you back the most from this goal? She gave us some good feedback and some good ideas of what we might be able to cover and what is holding her back. So the main part of it was basically holding on to these past stories. And that's a huge thing. I think I have covered this in the blog before, but sometimes I think we can go a lot deeper in these podcasts. So I figured it would be a good topic to discuss.
Especially because we're talking. And when you talk, it's so much easier sometimes.
Right. It's just a lot more impromptu. And it's just, we can go a lot deeper,
Yeah.
I think, especially because we have all three of our perspectives.
Right.
And so it's a lot easier. So basically what happens, I think, is that when you are moving for a big goal, and usually this is a next level goal, all right? You know, obviously it's not going to be for a current level goal. It's generally going to be for something that's pretty big to you. It might even be your ultimate goal, your ultimate level goal. And what happens is that this new goal is so opposed to your current vision of who you are, to your current subconscious beliefs and expectations of life, that it takes a lot of changing. Okay, I've talked before about the subconscious structures, right? And how those structures, if they're not supporting your goal, then you have a lot of changes to make and a lot of resistance to work through, right? But this is something where it's down to your ego identity. Because what is the ego, basically? The ego labels itself. The ego says, I am blank. And, you know, we talk about the power of the I am statements, and it is powerful when you use it consciously. But, you know, when you have it unconsciously, where you have all these ego identifications, I am this, I am that, I am that, it kind of limits us. So some examples are the ego might say, I am a poor person. Not only do I not have a lot of money, but I am a poor person. That is who I am. That restricts us. Another example would be, I am unworthy of love. You know, not only is it hard for me to find a relationship, but I'm actually a person who is unworthy of love, or something like that. And these are all very common examples of labels the ego applies to us. Or some people will say, I'm not good with money. That's who I am. I'm just not good with money. And that is actually their identity. That is actually their label. Have you ever had experiences like that, Justin, of labels that you had to work through?
Yes. I'll say for me, I have a lot of natural like force personality. So a lot of
Right,
times
right.
I'll have a label and I'll just so blow through it. But I'm going to tell you something. You really want to get rid of those because they
Yes.
actually hang you up. There are sometimes you can overcome it. Sometimes you can, whatever. But you really want to anything that is opposed to your goal. Any label that's attached to it that's a negative label, you want to find out where it is, and you want to discard it. You want to let it dissipate and show it no focus because it actually takes your power, takes your energy away.
It does.
So
It
if
does.
you are trying to get this great job and oh man, this job is going to pay me a lot of money, but if you're naturally going, yeah, but I'm usually poor anyway. That's what I do. Just don't have a lot of money. Well,
Right.
it's going to make it very. It's going to make it a lot harder, very hard to get that job.
Right.
You may get it, but I'm going to tell you something. You're going to have stuff sticking to you about this no money thing
Hmm.
for quite some time, or anything related to that. So for me, yeah, I've had the one thing I've noticed that I will do is funnel a lot of energy into the things I'm good at, and some of the stuff that I'm not as good at, just later it comes back. It's like there's these certain things. Like for me, it's I have a hard time. Man, I have a hard time leading, or I have a hard time.
Hmm.
I'm not. I'm not somebody that organizes groups. Well,
Right.
you know what,
Right.
man? That has come back a few times to mess me up because I have a.
Yeah.
It's just I got to learn to do something better because it has made it so that it's hard for me to do that.
Right. And and it's okay if it's a label that really isn't that important to you. If it's like, if you said, I'm not that great at organizing groups, and then, but you're like, but I don't really want to organize groups, that's fine. Like,
Yeah,
I get a lot of people who say, I'm horrible with money, but, my spouse handles it, let's say. That's how,
yeah,
That's
Christine, you're,
me.
you're like that, right?
but
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not good at numbers. I guess.
yeah,
Like,
Right.
but for me, I kind of want to get rid of those if I can. I mean, some of them I
Oh,
guess you can
sure. Yeah.
hang out, but I think the more of those you have around, this is just me. The more of those you
Right.
have around, the less capable you are in some respects. Just for me, that's just me. That's a personal thing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so when I look at those labels, I try to go, okay, why am I like that? And if is this a good time for me to get rid of that label?
Mhm.
You know, if it's not, then it's okay. But at some point, I'm going to want to get rid of that label.
Right. Yeah. And I think it just depends if it's a very good self growth goal,
Yeah.
but, you know, your most important labels to get rid of are the ones that are going to get in the way of you achieving your goal. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you have a goal and then you have a label that's getting in the way of that, well, I want this thing, but my labels about myself are getting in the way, then that's going to be something, that you have to deal with. So if someone says, I want to be a public speaker, I want to speak to groups of people,
Mm-hmm.
and then they say, but I am not a good speaker. Now, some people might genuinely not be a good speaker and they have to work at that. And that's okay. If you have an awareness of your limitations, that's one thing, right?
yep.
But, if you are saying I am not a good speaker and therefore I just can't do this, that's totally different because it's something you can work on. Anything that you're trying to pursue, you can work on that and you can achieve it, right? If you work on those labels and those limiting beliefs. So if it's limiting you, then that's a label you really want to work on. But, sometimes, I mean, yeah, if you have labels that really aren't making that big of a difference in your life, you may want to do those anyway, but they're sort of lower priority than something that is getting in the way of an immediate, very high priority goal.
Another one is I have, like, man, I'm not much of a leader, or I don't run, I just kind of like to do my own thing. Well, if you want to run a business, you're gonna have to have some like business running leadership slash potential.
Right.
So for me, that's kind of I'm actually deciding how much of that I really want to, how much of that I want to give remove or how much I need to, because at some point I'm gonna want to be doing certain things on my own, and so you're gonna want that, or you might want to do another promotion at work. Well, right now, there's some I wouldn't want to manage anyone. I'll admit that there's some leadership skills and some management skills.
Right.
They're there. I can feel the talent there, but they haven't really been developed. So that's kind of what I'm
Right.
working
Yeah.
on at this point.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, have the awareness of what you need to work on, but also don't make that a label. Like,
Right.
there's a difference between I am not a good leader, period,
Yeah.
and currently I don't have good leadership skills, but I can develop them. That's a huge
Yeah.
difference,
It's a huge difference,
isn't it? That's a massive difference.
That's kind of the one I'm using. Yeah,
exactly.
Just haven't developed those yet.
Right, you
What
haven't
if you
developed
don't
those yet.
really give a crap about wanting
that's
to be a good
okay.
leader? I mean,
And that's,
Well,
again, that's your choice.
yeah.
Don't.
Right. That's totally your choice, whether you want to do that or not. But
And then you have a situation that I ran into where this happened yesterday. So a question could be, do you think that the universe could force your hand into learning a skill?
I know what
Yes.
you're getting.
Because, so basically, so here's one. Maybe it's one to help build your confidence, because I swore up and down I would not learn how to play the organ.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to be forced into a situation where I have to learn the organ and I don't have a choice. So I have to learn how to play it. Now actually that's not entirely true, because I could use the piano, but it would be a heck of a lot to get it up into the choir loft.
Right. Uh-huh.
So it would just be easier for me to just learn how to play the organ. But I vowed I would not learn to play the organ, and then God laughed in my face and said,
Yep.
"You're learning to play the organ." So, because I have to sub at another church.
And I think that might be something where you had maybe a higher priority goal, and you might not even know what that is yet sometimes.
I don't know what it is. I have no
You
idea.
might not even know what that is, but the universe says, okay, well, you say that, but, what if it can be easy for you? And what if it's actually in line with a goal that you really want in the future?
Yeah.
And that's something that you're going to pursue.
And I'll tell you one thing where it gets me is I found myself more knowledgeable than a lot of people around me, but not necessarily in position to either use it all or in position, or I'm in situations where I've been in situations where people who were like managers in different places were less capable, and it was just kind of like, well, yeah, there's that lack of leadership thing. You once again. So, I've learned that. So that's kind of why I've decided to at least put myself in situations where I could do more. Or because I've just noticed that. So what I ended up having to do is not let it be a label that prevents me from doing something. So whenever there's something in front of me, I actually try to take the challenge on and do whatever it is to try to develop myself.
Yeah, and that's good. And that means, that's something that you are actively working on changing that label because you are aware of it. So once you become aware of that label, once you become aware of that past story, then you can actively work on it and say, okay, first of all, is it actually a true story? Because it may not even be true. For you, it might be, it sounds like you're very aware of that, so it's probably true, that you're not quite up to the standard you want to be at. Mm-hmm. But for someone else, they might have a story that is actually not even true. And they, work on that, but they actually don't really need to work on that. All they need to do is to change that label that they have of themselves. And then they'll be successful. Like, for example, I always had major self-worth issues. I've talked about this on the blog before. It was always, even up to after the time when I met Christine, I had major self-worth issues. And
I've seen the worst of it.
And they got in the way again and again and again and again and again. And I just was not a confident person. And it did get in my way.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously it wasn't true because, anyone is worthy. And I have a lot of good skills. I have a lot of talents. And so it's not true, right? So that was something that was really a big issue and I had to work through. And I have realized a lot lately when I'm looking at my work and when I'm looking at how I work with others in my business, in co-creation coaching, I'm thinking, I'm so much more self-confident than I used to be. And it's almost a weird sensation sometimes because it's sort of one of those things where I didn't really do it super consciously. It just sort of snuck up on me.
The more you tried, the worse you were.
Right.
And, and I don't mean to get personal, and I won't get too personal, but you used to, if I said one thing wrong, you would get so upset. And you really don't anymore.
Because I got sensitive.
You did.
Right.
But now you just now you're a lion. When you used to cry.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to but you did. You used to cry every time I yelled at you, but now you give it right back. And I love it because you're just like me.
Well, I'm a lot more secure in myself.
You are.
And so that was something I had to work through. And I don't think I could have had the success I've had in co-creation coaching if I hadn't had that self-worth and worked through that, because I had many other projects in the past that it just got in the way and I wasn't able to do it.
This is your, how many?
I don't even know what number, maybe number 6.
We're at 6 now?
Maybe,
but this has been the longest.
It's been, very long lasting now. And
I think it's 5 or 6, yeah.
It's been going so well. So that is something, sometimes it's not even true and you have to work through it and remove that label, remove that story. So that's the thing about ego stories is that, again, your ego is basically a master of storytelling. And it's so easy to get caught up in those stories and to get lost in them and to really relate to them and be identified by them. I see it all the time with people and it's not healthy. It's not good. Again, if you're aware of it, that's a great thing.
And I could tell you, for me, I used to be very ashamed of some stuff in my past. I mean, They weren't really bad things.
Right, no.
But they were characteristics. Yeah, they were characteristics about myself. Mm-hmm. About I'm a very childlike person. And I always have been. And I used to be very embarrassed about that. And other experiences I've had, but now that I've embraced them,
right,
my life has done a 180.
Right.
Because I've embraced them and I use those experiences to help people in the future.
Right, exactly. So you have to come to terms with that. But
you do.
The ego is so good at telling these stories, a lot of times that are disempowering to you, but you believe in them. They seem factual. Mm-hmm. And you have to really get to the point where you can see through them and say, okay, these stories, they are not true about me. Or I get to choose what's true about me. So when you have these things in the past that have happened, you really have to look at them and say, okay, this is just an ego story. I don't have to believe in this. I don't have to go there. I don't have to give it my focus. I can just remove my focus from it and let it not be true about me, because it's not. So you have to really be so aware of it because the ego is so good at doing this, and it's not going to stop. It is really what it does. But you have to really be the creator. You have to be the one who says, these are the stories that are true about me because I choose them to be true about me. They're only true because I choose them to be true. And that's it, right? No other reason. I choose the stories that I abide by in my life. I choose the stories that match me. I am worthy. I am, a successful person. I am good with money. I am successful in relationships. And whatever else is a story that is important to you. You choose those stories. You have to be the storyteller of your own life. Because if you're not, your ego will tell those stories for you and it will not be empowering most of the time. right? It won't
Yes.
be empowering most of the time. So you have to be in charge of telling those stories. And if you have a story in your life that you don't like, then you have to come in and say, hey, I don't like that story. I'm going to change it. I'm going to change that story. And then you do so. But when you are held by your stories, you are a prisoner of them. You're a prisoner of those stories, and you just can't get out of that unless you let go of them. So that's very important. And when you refuse to identify with those stories, when you refuse to be labeled by those stories, then you are totally free. You are the creator of your life, and you can choose what stories apply to you.
And use the positive experiences you've had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. Use those and remember those, because they really make up who you have become and who you are.
Right,
At least
exactly.
for me, they have.
Yeah, definitely. And they can be really good supports as you're creating your new stories.
Yeah.
Those would be really great supports. So if I'm looking at I am a worthy person, how do I know that's true? I don't have to justify it, but I kind of do for my subconscious mind a little bit. Okay, it's going to say, no, I don't believe it. Well, what about this experience? Now, you have to choose experiences that are emotional. You can't just say,
Yes.
well, I did really well on my test in school. Who cares?
Yeah.
Unless that's a
Yes.
really emotional thing to you. You have to choose things that are emotional, because look, your subconscious mind is not logical. It doesn't care if you are a worthy person, logically speaking, because it's not it's not logical.
No, it's not.
So you have to choose experiences to back up your statements, but those experiences have to be emotional. And when you can back them up, then your subconscious will start seeing what you're saying. If you say, look, I am a very kind person, I have helped people, and, go back to experiences where you were really a wonderful person. And it might feel weird to sort of toot your own horn a little bit, but go back to experiences where you really did help others, or whatever it is that makes you feel worthy.
Yeah, I do all the time.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to do it for you. So that is how you start constructing these new stories, is by going back to these experiences and constructing them and showing them to your subconscious and making these stories more important. When these negative stories come up, when your subconscious says, yeah, but what about that time when blank? And then what you have to do is say, not important, doesn't reflect on me. So you have to give less importance to the negative stories and give high importance through your emotions to your positive stories. Right. Remember, the emotions are the language of your subconscious mind. So you have to say, all right, this experience, not that important. I'm not going to react to it. This experience, very important. I'm going to really react to it, be really happy, be really excited, and feel good about it. And that will tell my subconscious mind, hey, look, this is a positive experience that says something about me. And then it will reconstruct those stories to match those new experiences that you are focusing on. So that is how you set about constructing your stories.
Mm-hmm. That's how I do it.
Right.
And the other thing I do is just focus purely energetically and just ignore the bad stories and just the emotion, the stories that don't serve my purposes. 'Cause actually, they're learning experiences also. So there's stories
Sure.
that don't serve my purposes, and then I just use the energy, the energy to move forward. Like I haven't had a lot of dates. I've had a few. So for me, it's kind of because I've had a lot of stuff in the way from all kinds of life stuff, from jobs I didn't care for to being a student with no money, and it is what it is. Now I'm actually ready to roll, so I feel pretty good about it. But it's only because I actually worked on that and I got some of the actual barriers out of the way that are for real physical barriers. So now I can use the momentum to build that pathway. So it feels pretty good to do that. But
Right.
no, man, I spent I mean that's one where I've had very few actual good like experiences. Period. So for me, I actually have to work with that one. So it's just how it
Right,
is.
exactly. So that's another thing you can do. There is a wonderful method when I was getting my NLP training called dissociation. And there's one form of dissociation. This was in my master's training called past dissociation. So you can either be associated into your past or dissociated from your past. So association is basically when you're in the story, you're really emotionally invested in it, you're believing in it, you're there, seeing what you saw, hearing what you heard, feeling what you felt when you had that experience. That's association. Dissociation is when you are saying, okay, what did I learn from that experience? You're stepping out of it.
Yeah. Third
So,
person going meta.
right. So some of the questions that we went through to dissociate from your past are, what did I learn by going through that experience? What can that experience teach me as I go into the future? And anything that's going to basically analyze your experiences and step away from them and take something from them, take the big picture view of them. That's going to be dissociating from your past experiences. And that's going to help you to get out of your past stories, step out of them. And then you can associate into the stories you want to create. So if you want to create a story that says, I am a successful person, then you go back and you remember all the experiences where you did feel like a successful person, and you step into them, you associate with them, and you say, what was it like when I had that experience?
You can even like take an experience that was similar and
Right.
just use the feelings anyways.
Exactly, right. Yeah. You can use those feelings, you can cross them over and use those in another place. So that's a little bit of how you can use NLP for creating new stories. Dissociate from the old stories by taking a big picture view of the past that maybe you didn't like so much, but seeing what it could have taught you, and then stepping into the stories that you do like and going back to those experiences that did help you and that did make you feel the way you want to feel. So that's something you can do there. And I think the final thing is not to put too much attention on this, not to try to change the story. Just like with anything we talk about, you really have to take a very light touch with these stories. Just like with a lot of the other stuff we talk about, you have to take a really light touch with these stories. Because if you try to forcefully change them and make them into something else and really push against the old stories, it's not going to work, right? Just like what we talk about with negative manifestations, it's just not going to work. Mm-hmm. So you have to really take a light touch and, first of all, obviously, step out of the old story, do your best to dissociate, do your best to really just remove yourself, step out of it, and not push against it. The less focus you put on that story, the better.
And one thing I want to say too, because this is one thing that I kind of experienced is, as I went through my journey, is don't be afraid of the future and don't be afraid of failing.
Right.
Because, if you are afraid of letting the past of letting the past experiences dictate your future, it will happen.
Yes.
So you have to take what you can from the past in a positive way, like your positive past experiences. But if you're afraid of it, then it's definitely going to happen.
Right.
So you have to not be afraid of it, because there's never ever a such thing as failure, only feedback.
That's true.
That's one thing that Brandon taught me in NLP.
That's an NLP statement.
Yeah. And so that's the one thing that I realized. And, there are a lot of things that I've had a lot of feedback about that, that have happened. But once I decided that the more I delved deeply into that experience, those past experiences, the more I immersed myself in them, the more I knew I wouldn't fail. Because when you are made up of your positive experiences, you build on them, and then you grow. And then it's like a seed. and then you grow, and then the fears, even if you're nervous, they kind of dissolve.
Right. Exactly.
And for me, with past experiences, my saying is, there's no such thing as failure. There's just things that didn't work out. And as long as I know why they didn't work out, it's okay. There were certain businesses that failed or things that failed due to the fact that I thought I had support I didn't have. Well, I mean, if I kind of think that I'm going to have some help or some people to buy into what I'm doing, and I don't, well, if I was counting on that, or if I thought that was a possibility and it didn't work, it's not really my fault that it didn't work out. I mean, it is. I'm responsible for it.
Right.
But if I was counting on something and it just didn't happen, people didn't do what I thought they were going to do, then hey, that's life.
Exactly right.
So that just different stories like that. You go, okay, why didn't this work? Oh, okay. Well, then we'll just make sure the next time it doesn't matter. We'll make sure that that's accounted for. So that's kind of another way I use it.
Right. You always want to be reacting emotionally to what's going on in life. Once something bad happens, you want to keep a very even keel emotionally and not react to it, because if you react to it, then your subconscious mind is going to learn from it and take something you don't want it to take from that experience.
Right.
Right? So you really want to be careful of where you put your emotions. I talked in one post, I don't remember which one, about your emotional currency. Where are you putting your emotional currency? Because if you're putting in experiences that you don't like, then you're going to get more of those. And if you're putting in experiences you do like, you're going to get more of those. So you want to be careful where you're putting that emotional currency and how you're reacting to things. So again, you just want to take a very light touch with this stuff, not make it such a big deal and not push against the old stories, not get frustrated with them. Why do I feel this way? No, you have to just recognize that they're there, make peace with them, and gradually, step out of them, dissociate from those old stories, and create new ones. It's not really a huge deal. You don't have to make it a huge deal. And the more you make it a huge deal, the more that you're going to kind of sabotage yourself, right? And you really don't want to do that because it's just not going to help, obviously. So just really take a light touch with this stuff and take it slowly. You don't have to rush this. There's no race, to get this all done. You're never really going to get it all done. And work at it. But as you work on your new goals, you will run into the labels that are keeping you from what you want to achieve. And so you will have the opportunity to work on those and realize again that you are the creator of your life. You are the storyteller. I love that analogy. You are the storyteller of your life. You get to tell the stories. No one else, not your ego, no one else. You get to tell the stories. You get to dictate how things go for you. And you get to say what your future looks like. And if you're not doing that, you are really losing out on a huge amount of power that is your inherent birthright. Right? You have that power. And if you're not taking advantage of it, then you are letting go of a lot. And so many people aren't taking advantage of that, sadly. So don't believe in those old stories. Create new ones and go after what you want to create, because that is your right to do so. So that was a wonderful discussion as always. And I appreciate everyone who joined us and is listening in. So once again, if you'd like to check out the transcript of our podcast or comment, you can head over to cocreationcoaching.org/create013. And if you would like to download our free ebook, 10 Reasons You Aren't Getting Results with the Law of Attraction, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/LOA download. Again, that's cocreationcoaching.org/LOA download. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and you can see us again on this podcast in 2 weeks. We're here every other Saturday, and the other Saturdays are The Unseen World, so we alternate. So feel free to check that out. But again, thanks everyone for joining us, and I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
And I'm Justin Williams.
And anything is possible.